Now let's take a look at what is happiness. Psychologists look at happiness from two different positions. We'll take a closer look to get a better understanding of what we can think about when we think of happiness. But first, I invite you to take a minute before we move on and think about what happiness means to you. Pause the lecture here and just write down what your own definition of happiness is. Welcome back. Keep in mind what you wrote down and maybe contrast it with what I'll tell you now. Happiness is something that has to be defined by everyone individually. That is also why scientists call it subjective well-being. Essentially, you know best how happy you are. That's why I invite you to examine and monitor what works for you, what makes you happier. Throughout this course, I'll present various things that you can do to become happier and more fulfilled. Not every exercise or strategy will work for everybody. Everything I present to you is scientifically researched, but that does not mean that everything works for everybody. Try everything, but acknowledge that there is no panacea that makes everybody lastingly happier. In research, psychologists distinguish roughly between two different understandings of happiness. First, we will look at hedonic happiness. Happiness from this perspective is simply feeling good and being satisfied with one's life. There are three factors which influence it: how satisfied we are with our lives, how often we feel good, and how often we feel bad. So it's about pleasure and satisfaction. But there is a problem. If you could be connected to an experience machine that would keep you in a constant state of cheerful happiness, it will give you a constant feeling of pleasure regardless of what happens in your life. Would you choose to get hooked up? Well, it turns out that for most people, simply feeling good and being satisfied is not enough. It's not the only thing that matters, and that's why there's another complementary definition of happiness: Eudemonic happiness. It is a concept that is as old as human philosophy and taken from the ancient Greeks. Eudemonic happiness means the actualization of our human potential, not simply experiencing good feelings. True happiness is living in accordance with one's true nature. It has a much wider definition and encompasses all of these areas: self-esteem, or having fulfilling relationships, accepting oneself, and mastering one's environment. Achieving, and so this definition of happiness also includes what we think success means to us. Also, having a higher meaning, a higher purpose in our lives. And last but not least, personal growth. There is even more to that, but now look back on your list or what you wrote before when you thought about what does happiness mean to you, and maybe rethink it. Maybe you have to refine it. What are your thoughts? Rounding up, happiness can be viewed from two different angles: hedonic happiness and eudemonic happiness. This understanding provides the basis for this course. Happiness is much more than simply feeling good as often as possible.